I'll tell you a little bit about myself and how I got involved with medical marijuana and how I got to be here to talk about it with you today. In the late 1990s, I was treated for a serious set of symptoms. I had been not diagnosed. I'd been misdiagnosed. On the path to finding out what was wrong or what was causing my pain symptoms, I was on very strong pharmaceuticals, probably at the bottom of the strength there. I was on Darvocets and then Demerol, and then they were going to move on to, they wanted to do Duralgesic patch. I had a terrible reaction, wanted to go to methadone, which was an absolute deal breaker. There is no methadone pain treatments in my world. So I started using medical marijuana to treat my pain and nausea symptoms. Probably, I think it was 2010, Arizona legalized medical marijuana. It took another 2 years before dispensaries were open, and in that time there was, you could call it a volunteer movement to get the program up and running, and that consisted of a co-op program. And what that meant is we had a program here where if you were a caregiver, which meant grew marijuana for 5 patients, it was legal for you to grow marijuana. My husband and I joined a group of 60 other people, and together we grew marijuana for 350 licensed medical marijuana patients basically in Maricopa County, but we had patients that came in from all over the state. There weren't a lot of large cooperatives like ours that grew. Gosh, we had 40, 50 different strains at one point. So my daughter ran the patient side of that for the most part. I did more of the dispensary side, coordinated the different strains that were available to patients when they came in, helped them get their medicine, helped new patients get tours of our grow. And that's kind of the initial start of legal medical marijuana here in our state. Once the dispensaries opened, our co-op had to close. The way the law was written, you couldn't have a caregiver program and a dispensary program. So I went on to open a kitchen. The first kitchen was brief and an adventure in cannabis, if you want to call it that. And then I literally walked out of the door of that kitchen to become partners in opening another kitchen. So in Arizona, I did open 2 edible lines. We were in over 33 stores in Arizona. And I left the edible world and opened my own restaurant. And my husband and I own a restaurant in the small town where we live in Arizona. Another little part of that world prior to cannabis, between when I told you I was on the heavy pain medications and when I started working full-time within the medical marijuana industry, I was a compliance officer and an investigation supervisor for the state of Arizona, and I read rules and laws and interpreted rules and laws as they pertain to people receiving care in the state. We were very careful to understand rules fully, which I think has helped me a lot in my work within the industry of medical marijuana and marijuana advocacy in general, because the rules change all the time. So you have to get used to and not hate reading rule in order to stay legal and to stay safe. Or find somebody like me who is a law nerd, as it pertains to cannabis anyway, and does read some of those rules as they change. So got to stay informed in that. We have some bonuses. Bridget's probably let you know in the chat room coming up at the end of the webinar, and we'll talk to you more about those in a minute. So Why do I know stuff about marijuana? I've smoked a lot of marijuana. I have been in the industry kind of as it grew in Arizona, so I was lucky enough to be around when the cooperatives got up and running and we started growing all these different strains. So I got to try every strain and we all discussed and shared our anecdotes about the strains. And then when we started having patients and 350 patients, we got all their input on the strains. I kept track of all that, kept my own documentation on people's outcomes and results, and used that basically just to help my friends and family who had questions about marijuana because they knew my husband and I were volunteers in this cooperative program. Then I thought I was out of the medical marijuana business. The industry is evolving, and I had my adventure, and I did what I did, and I decided that I had done enough, and that I was ready to move on and work independently. In order to be a medical marijuana chef in Arizona, you have to be licensed by a medical marijuana dispensary. I can't just open a bakery and get my own license and run my own business and grow my own plants. I had a couple negative experiences and I just felt like it wasn't something that I wanted to do another time. So I have a bakery of my own, I have a restaurant of my own, and I was counseling patients here in Arizona on the side, one-on-one. As friends. I've had some incredible experiences. We're going to get to your questions in a minute. The thing that I think I want you to know about what I've learned is mostly that it's not based on Google searches or videos. It's the over 500 patients that I've worked with, and their stories. We had a veteran who came in who had PTSD, and he brought his wife, and part of the protocol for coming into our dispensary was we gave you a tour of our grow operation after you received your medical marijuana card, usually while you were there picking up your card. The wife of this veteran cried as we were taking her through the grow. We didn't notice it at first, and I turned around and noticed she was crying, and I was very concerned and asked her if she was okay and what was wrong, and she was very upset that her husband was going to be doing drugs, and she didn't want him using a drug, and she apologized. She said she felt bad. We were fine. We understood. We had a lot of, it was very new. Medical marijuana had just recently been legal, so nothing really surprised us. Fast forward 30 days later, she's back. She comes into basically our little office in front of the grow and still in tears again. This time, though, she had a plate of cookies and a big bouquet of flowers. And her tears were because she was so thankful that she had her husband back. And I think that was probably within, a cooperative was only open a year, probably total, 13 months. And that was probably midway through my work. The thing that you need to remember and that I'd learned from working with 500 people is cannabis is a plant, and so there's going to be a lot of variation, and we're going to go into that a little more. And we all want the same thing. All these people, basically had different ways of putting it and had different reasons for needing it, but everybody was looking for the same thing. It was to either end suffering or feel better, however you word it, and to be out of discomfort. And we found ways to do it, and it's easy, and it's not an issue. So I'm going to answer a couple questions. Bridget's going to give you a little information in the chat room, and then we'll go over the 5 myths.